Hi, good evening, everyone. We have today with us Dinesh Vazirani, who is the founder and CEO of Saffronart. Dinesh has been at the forefront of the contemporary art market in India, and we're very happy to have him join us on this session of Tune In. So, welcome, Dinesh, and thank you for doing this. Let's kick it off with a general question on the evolution of the art market in India. From being something that was a matter of personal taste with a few exclusive collectors to now being something that has a relatively much broader base and being considered as a separate investment class and an asset that even institutional investors are considering as part of their portfolio. So it's been quite an interesting journey and you've been part of it. So why don't you just talk us through that a little bit?
Really, I believe that the market started evolving in the 2000s. To give you an example, the entire transactional art market in the year 2000 was something like $3 million worldwide. But art and culture, I'll put them together, has been in the blood of Indians for 5,000 years. Earlier it wasn't transacted, it was consumed. You had Maharajas and you had who were patrons who kind of adorned their palaces and their homes. So the appreciation of art has been with Indians for a long, long time. The value rise has been in the last so-called 2 decades. And that was only because there was more ways to transact art. Earlier, you used to go to a gallery and the galleries used to pull out paintings one by one. And I think with the dawn of the internet, everyone had access to the same things, whether you were a big buyer or a small buyer. And I think that encouraged the whole movement of people trying to purchase art. And like with most things, when people see value, like you bought something at say 100 rupees, and within a few years, it's 1,000 rupees. You suddenly get that confidence that yes, there is some merit to this as an asset class. So what we saw is the art market in the first 5 years between 2000 and 2005 go from 3 million to almost 60 million. Because you suddenly got this huge amount of buyers which came in, thought that this was reasonable value, and they jumped in. Of course, the art market, like every other market, goes through its ups and downs. Today, however, what we have is probably the strongest Indian art market that I've seen. And the reason is that earlier there was a lot of speculation. But today what we have is the buyers of art are consumers. They are people who are actually hanging those works in their house. They are strong collectors. And we have museums. The dawn of museums in India, private museums, kind of became, for lack of a better word, almost like vacuum cleaners. They just sucked out all the supply of great art, which went into the museum collection, and those never came back into the market. So automatically what you saw is the supply of great paintings coming down, the demand increasing, and because there was no supply, the prices also went up because demand was going up. So I think today people have a lot of confidence in the so-called longevity of art. Art is not a short-term asset. It's not a stock. You can't trade it on a daily basis. It is a long-term asset. And because the nature of it being long-term, values only accrue in the long term. But today it's a market that's real. It's without speculation. It is a market that has inherent value. And that inherent value today is understood by people who are consuming art. The art market actually has boomed in this pandemic. The reason for that is people were locked up in their houses. They were kept engaged with the online mechanism. They had time to research. They had time to transact. We did auctions all through the pandemic. And that really kept people engaged.
Thanks. And that leads me actually to the next question, Dinesh. Apart from the supply and demand dynamics, which you just sort of explained, what are the other factors that go into pricing great art? Why are certain artists and certain artworks priced over others?
Each artist has a golden period. So like, to give an example, a golden period for Hussein was the 1960s and 70s. The golden period for Gaitonde was the 70s and 80s and further. For Tayyab, it was much later. It was the so-called 90s and 2000s. So each artist has that golden period. Any work from that particular period will always command a higher price. Along with that, you have to understand that the painting you're buying, what relevance has it had in the artist's career? Why is it important? Was it something done at a time where the artist is producing the best work? Has it been exhibited in international shows? Has it been published? Has it been critiqued? All those factors go into pricing. What also matters is the condition of the painting. Is it good condition? Has it been damaged in the past? Has there been a restoration done to it? The other one, which is very, very important, is what is the provenance of the painting? And really all it means is chain of ownership. What is that chain of ownership before you got the painting? Was it in an important collection? Like say, was it in the collection of the big collectors of Indian art like Chester and David Hurwitz? Was it in the Glenborough Museum collection? So where has the painting come from? Because the buyer who first bought it, if he's an important collector, would have already made that self-selection of quality. So all these factors go into pricing.
Fair enough. But then moving on to Saffron, you've had a ringside seat, as you say, from the year.
With lots of punches also.
Sorry?
With lots of punches.
With a lot of punches as well. But you've been a very active player, and your contribution to the development of this market in India can't be understated. So just wanted to hear from you.
In Saffronart's journey, it's been about 22 years. But it's been a journey when we started, people didn't believe that people would buy art on the internet. They said, "You're crazy, don't do this. No one's going to buy art on the internet."
I remember that.
You really do remember that. So it was a very different time. But I think it was maybe some madness, maybe some determination, which kept you going. And our principle was very simple. We started Saffronart from the perspective of collectors. And you didn't have any access to art. You had no publications, you had no books, you had no information, you had no transparency. So Saffronart was founded, and let's give all this to people. Let it be out there in the public domain. They have references, they have prices, they have comparisons, and let them make the decision after that. Of course, there was a lot of education, a lot of seminars, a lot of discussion, a lot of international exhibitions that we did to engage people all over the world. And I think all these different factors build confidence in the market. But people said, now we believe in the so-called authenticity and credibility of Saffronart, and that's why we will transact with them. So yeah, it's been a great journey. But I feel today is probably the most mature market in the world for Indian art. It's not speculative, and it's got some real collectors and patrons.
What advice would you give to the young, wealth creators who are now thinking about getting into art and building their own private collection? I know Saffron is very popular with young professionals because for all the reasons that you mentioned in terms of transparency and access. But what's the few tips or what's the few pitfalls to avoid?
Firstly, art, take your time. There's no hurry to buy art. Do your research, go to exhibitions, do your research on the internet, understand who the artist is, what have they done, arm yourself with knowledge before you transact art. Secondly, there are no deals. Okay, so if you think there are and someone's offering you a painting at 1/3 or half the price, that's an alarm bell straight away. So just be careful of very, very tempting deals because you might land up with a fake on your wall. Thirdly, to safeguard yourself, buy from reputed sources. Whether it's a great gallery or a good auction house or a reputed dealer, choose the source of where you're buying from carefully. Lastly, check all the things I talked about earlier. Provenance, understand what medium it is, understand the condition of a work. So basically, learn and educate yourself. Choose well, because if you chose well, your investment's going to last. And art in many ways is a reflection of three things. It's a reflection of the polity around us, the society, and the experiences the artist have. So it's like a history book. So buy a slice of history and have fun with it.
And as Dinesh says, when we are comparing asset classes, you can't hang up a share on your wall and look at it and derive pleasure from it. So while we look at art as an asset and as an investment class, let's not forget the primary purpose of art, which is beauty and appreciation of our own culture. Thank you so much, Dinesh.
Thank you, Sridhar.
It was a real pleasure as always.
Thank you.